Okay, my poem is Lady Lazarus, written by Sylvia Plath. Lady Lazarus is from the collection Ariel, and Sylvia Plath was a poetry writer in the 1960s. She produced a lot of confessional poetry consisting of conversational stylistic choices, basing a lot of her themes and context on personal experiences with her constant battle with depression and the early death of her father, as well as infidelity from her husband. But then a lot of these themes are created universal through certain imagery and metaphors within her poems. Lady Lazarus, this passage is not from the beginning of Lady Lazarus, but in the middle. And the metaphors and rhythmic, lyrical, stylistic choices used emphasize the battle of power within the speaker is having within this poem, describing the inner turmoil due to the art of the poem and the audience, as well as touching on the power dynamics between males and females, expressing the oppressive and dominant figures of males within the speaker's life, or extending onto Sylvia Plath's life. I will be analysing this sequentially as it begins from lines 1 to 2. Dying is an art like everything else. Plath is celebrating the everyday life, almost comparing it to an art form. However, then she's also demeaning art itself by expressing that everything in everyday life is an art form, which is to an extent ironic, as her living and her life is based on art, and she confesses everything through art. This then continues from lines 3 to 5, saying, I do it exceptionally well. I do it so it feels like hell. I do it so it feels real. The rhyme within well and hell connects the contrasting ideas of the positive and negative views of dying, and then the repetition of I do it, I do it, I do it, and I gives the speaker power over the situation, giving them a sense of power within this constant discussion, talking about evil and good and the enemy she's consistently facing. In the next stanza, from lines 7 to 9, it goes on to say it's easy enough to do it in a cell, it's easy enough to do it and stay put. It's the theatrical. Early on, it's achieving a, it's stating a constriction within life, as she's comparing it to a cell, as well as rhyming it to the previous lines, well and hell, and then it goes on to extend on the point that dying is an art form by saying it's a theatrical, shifting or extending onto the previous points. In the next stanza, it continues, come back in broad day to the same place, the same face, the same brute, on lines 11. Now this internal rhyme and repetition speeds the rhythm up almost to intensify, or speeds the rhythm up, slows the rhythm down to intensify what she is saying, but then this emphasis is increased by the interruption of this internal rhyme through brute, showcasing this dominant figure, or as she expresses her boredom through day-to-day life, or boredom within her life, the dominant figure is extended and significantly made different from the rest of the line through the straying of internal rhyme. This then a continuation on the next stanza on line 13, a miracle, as she's in a sarcastic tone, almost references her own art as she speaks through the speaker of the poem, mocking her own art in the next line, line 14, that knocks me out, as if to say her audience, addressing the audience, celebrating her art form, which inevitably knocks her out and has a toll on her. These ideas are continued through the poem in the next stanza, saying, next stanza from lines 16 to 17, for the eyeing my scars there is a charge, for the hearing of my heart, which is followed by a cassowary, which forces the readers to question the intimacy of her poems, while also questioning the charge that she is undergoing through this expression. This is further intensified by the slowing down of the melody and the rhythm through the repetition of AR, as my scars, there is a charge for hearing of my heart, extends this charge onto the audience, making them question whether or not this cost is worth this self-expression. This repetition is then continued on lines 19. There is a charge, a very large charge, further slowing down the rhythm in order to intensify the internal conflict of this art form. Then if you go to the next stanza, it moves on to reference the enemy. So, here doctor, so, here enemy. She's referencing the enemy, which still is ambiguous to the audience, as they cannot identify whether it is a male figure or the audience themselves. But there's a clear power conflict within this speaker's life or inner struggles. And then to skip to the next stanza as well, she's describing herself as valuable, and then in lines 28, she refers to the pure gold baby that melts to a streak. The personification exaggerates this inner turmoil, as not only is this object melting, but this baby is shrieking for their life, almost as if to announce that they are in danger, which resonates with the audience, as this childlike figure is clearly screaming out for help, but seems like she has no power within the situation. And then within the next stanza it continues, but the tone has switched or shifted in a sense, as she's no longer depicting herself as this powerless figure within the enemy, but slowly she's gaining a almost power over the audience or men themselves. As it says, ash, ash, you poke and stir, flesh, bone, there is nothing there. Many casseras are used and as a stopping point within this stanza to almost signify the death of her previous self or her previous selves, in this battle between power dynamics to try and overcome the themes or the struggles that she is facing. She then follows this up with the next stanza describing a wedding ring, a cake soap, and gold filling being left, showing the materials are only left behind, exposing almost the superficial side of society, leaving the audience to question what is making it so superficial, and whether or not it's the enemy creating this superficial atmosphere, as if she is targeting men, it's through their expectations of women almost, or their dominance. In the next stanza, the enemy is almost intensified by a new depiction. Here God, here Lucifer, on lines 37. The imagery of God and Lucifer creates a more dominant imagery of the enemy themselves, changing the enemy, shifting their depiction. But then it is followed by beware, beware, signifying a newfound power within the situation, even though it's God and Lucifer. It also is a point that God and Lucifer are namely depicted as male figures within history and religions. So it intensifies this theme of male presence in society having a dominance over women, and this speaker is trying to find a newfound power to fight their assertiveness. The enjambment speeds up the rhythm of the text while connecting all the lines of this stanza, intensifying the ideas of beware and beware. Finally, in the last stanza, she finalizes this newfound power through out of the ash I rise with my red hair, and I eat men like air. Now this rhyming scheme not only connects the two lines, but amplifies the effect of a power that she has discovered. And I eat men like air, the simile emphasizes the power and almost rebirth of her, which relates to the previous line with my red hair, creating phoenix imagery as she lives and survives from the fire and is more powerful than she was before.